Maybe you'd start by telling us who you are and what you do.
My name is Rafael Hernandez. I am the editor of a journal, Cultural Studies and Social Science journal, Temas, which means themes. It's a quarterly, and we publish articles about Cuban society, politics, the Cuban economy, the Cuban culture, etc. I think that we are living in one of the most interesting and potentially rich moments in Cuban history in the last 50 years. This is a turning point in Cuban socialism, the idea of a new kind of socialism, a new kind of social system is now in the making. And the idea could be basically expressed like this: to make socialism more social, and to make more and more people participating in defining and interacting with the political and economic system, to make more and more people getting involved in making a new economy, a new political system, new social relations. And there's a lot of hope and expectations, rising expectations and hope. I think this is a moment in which very important definitions for the future are made, and I think that the younger generations are playing an increasing role. They have to play an increasing role because they are the ones who are going to live in that future society. I think that the best US policy towards Cuba would be not to do nothing. I think that the best policy could be to let us make these changes to transform our society, our politics, our cultural life, the way we are doing, and to respect what the Cubans living in Cuba are doing. Our dialogue with Cubans living abroad is expanding. Reconciliation is taking place already between relatives living in the United States and in other countries and their relatives in Cuba. Cubans on both sides are now dialoguing. That dialogue is very important. It is important to preserve it. It is important not to interfere in that dialogue, and it is important not to interfere in any way in this normal, natural, and legitimate and authentic change that is taking place in our country.
Now, when you say do nothing, do you also mean leaving U.S. policy where it is today?
Well, U.S. policy has been for almost 50 years an interventionist policy to stop it, to stop doing that, to stop interfering in Cuban internal affairs. No democracy or freedom is going to be conquered or reached in Cuba on the basis of the U.S. support. We don't need U.S. support for that. The U.S. support delegitimize any effort we are making in Cuba to expand freedom of expression, freedom to travel, human rights, etc.
It's counterproductive toward those ends?
Absolutely counterproductive.
I don't think people in the United States understand that. Could you explain?
Well, this is a very nationalist country. Foreign threats, foreign pressures dictating us what to do is not very well received. And the United States record towards Cuba, the US government record towards Cuba is not exactly a democratic and libertarian one. I would say that the United States should stop interfering in Cuban affairs, not only because of the Cuban government and the will of the Cuban government to conduct those changes, to make it easier for the Cuban government to do it, but also to stop that foreign threat the United States is really meaning for us. If we don't have a foreign threat, we will be more able to make the changes that we need by ourselves.
You told a story in your office the other day about Raul Castro appearing at the UNIAC conference and how he was greeted with a standing ovation, I guess more than once. And I wasn't surprised by that. He is, after all, the leader of your country. But you seem to have a suggestion that it was significant for a larger reason. Could you explain?
I would say that the new leadership in Cuba has a confidence of most sectors of the Cuban people, including intellectuals. I think that the most critical, active, the strongest group of minds and active actors of this critical debate that is going on in Cuba today were present in that meeting, and they are expecting, they are supporting the new leadership on the basis of these expectations. There's a lot of hope and there's a lot of expectations about Raúl Castro, about the Cuban leadership, and there's a lot of there are many feelings related to the fact that he understands what is happening in Cuba and the needs of the Cuban people. I think that is reflecting not just the intellectuals' view, I think that is reflecting the ordinary people, the public opinion view. I think that the level of skepticism that we could find 6 months ago is now shifting towards a more and more hopeful view of the future.
Let me ask you one more question. You were talking earlier about levels of cooperation between the U.S. military and the Cuban military on Guantanamo in ways that I think the American people are quite unfamiliar. Could you talk even briefly about what goes on between the U.S. and Cuban military in Guantanamo?
Well, the U.S. military and the Cuban military cooperate particularly in the area of migration control, search and rescue missions, and even drug trafficking interception missions. In the last 12 years, there is a new dynamic of understanding and cooperation between the two sides. The Cuban military and the U.S. military on both sides of the Guantanamo fence talk to each other. They have a dialogue. Of course, the Cuban military don't like to have a U.S. military base there. Maybe the U.S. military don't like either to have a military base there. Maybe the Navy doesn't like that either. But I think that as long as they are coexisting in that part of Cuba, which is part of our sovereign territory, they are now having a dialogue and a goodwill attitude toward each other that didn't exist before. So the only problem is that Guantanamo is a prison, and that prison should be dismantled. If Guantanamo as a prison were dismantled and the military could talk to each other, I think that they could cooperate more freely and constructively than even now. But I think that the will to do it is very clear.